You go to a professional logging store, they're going to ask you a couple questions. They're going to ask you, do you want round file or do you want chisel cut? Well, they're very different, and it depends. So the loggers, the guys that are working production, the pros, they're going to use a chisel cut chain, and those guys are even good enough where they even hand file chisel chains. What it is a chisel chain, and rather than having a round file like you're used to seeing, it's cut on, grinders will cut them, or square file, they're cut on a really sharp chisel angle. And they have a very keen point on them. When you get one that's filed properly and you just touch the tip of it, you know how sharp a cat's claws are, mama? Sticky sharp? That's how sharp they are. And they cut like a demon. Man, there's nothing like just laying into a big Doug fir with a big 440 with a chisel chain on it. I mean, that is the epitome of masculinity right there. It gives you the fizz times 3. That's fine. However, they're very fragile. Once that tip is knocked off, then they're not efficient. Guys, it's very common for fowlers. They'll have several already pre-sharpened. They don't fool around with them when they're working typically. They yank it off, and then they'll throw a new chain on, and most of them have grinders. You can buy grinders now, do that, and they'll just pre-sharpen everything back home at the shop, or maybe they have a guy at the company that does it for them, and they're about production. You know, they're not out there hand filing anymore. So think of it as a Ferrari, super high performance. When it works great, and it's the best, right? Now, if you're in an environment where you're a professional homeowner, and you are not so good about cleaning the bark off, and maybe not so good about keeping your tip out of the dirt, and you have some problems with that, like many of us do, then the chisel cut is not necessarily the best fit for you. You're better off to go with a round file. Round file is you can file it yourself, just the traditional one. It's not going to have the performance of a chisel cut, but it is going to have a lot more durability. Think of the utility edge. You know, it's a very simple principle, same principle as like a kitchen knife. A kitchen knife is sharpened very thin. It needs to be high performance to be able to cut vegetables and tomatoes and such. Whereas a bushcraft knife, a hunting knife, a butchering knife, an EDC knife, you want a wider one. You want it to stay sharper longer. Yes, it's not going to be as good performance-wise, but that edge is going to last longer. That's the same principle with the round file. And that's what we use on wildland fireground. I don't advise using chisel grinds for that, because you're working in such a dirty environment. You got a lot of soot, you got a lot of dirt that's blown around in the bark, especially with the Doug fir trees. And those round file chains, although not as fast, will stay sharper, and you can use them longer, especially if you're doing stumping. If you're stumping down at the ground, or you're bucking with wood on the ground where you slip through and you get at the ground, that's the way. So round file's for durability, chisel file is for performance. That's kind of the rule of thumb on that.